Hey everybody, welcome once again to the Travis on Sports podcast. With you as always, I'm your host Travis Tyler, and I'm ready to get into the latest from around the sports world yet again. And trust me, there's a lot to get to this time. It's Friday, February 4th, 2022. We're covering the retirement of one of the all-time greatest players in the NFL, latest coach and GM news from the NFL, lawsuit from one of the premier coaching candidates in the NFL. Look back on the NFL's conference championships, not the Super Bowl this week. We'll talk about that next week's show. A couple college football all-star games. The latest from the MLB in regards to the lockout. An NHL jersey retirement for a legendary player on the East Coast. A little bit from college football's National Signing Day, but not much. That's kind of gone down in recent years in terms of the February signing day. Latest from college basketball, including the latest bracketology from ESPN's Joe Lunardi and CBS's Jerry Palm. And we have the announcement of the NBA All-Star teams. So to start things off, legendary Patriots and Buccaneers quarterback Tom Brady officially retired on Tuesday after 22 years and 7 Super Bowl wins, 3 MVP awards, countless Pro Bowls, and just a historic career. Holds so many records it would take forever to mention. Also, there's an article on the Football Savant about Brady's retirement that lists some of his achievements in there, so you can get a better look at that. He was drafted in the 6th round in 2000, 199th overall. His career was so successful that not only is he a first ballot instant Hall of Famer, but that spot is now covered every year in the draft as the Tom Brady spot. So 199th overall, 6th round in 2000. Split time in college as a starter with Drew Henson at Michigan, who ended up going to play for the Yankees for a little bit and then came back and played a little bit for the Texans and the Cowboys. In his second season in the league, Brady was forced into duty after an injury to Drew Bledsoe and went 11-3 as a starter. And that inadvertently gave way to the legend known as TB12. Led New England to its first ever Super Bowl title in 2002 and won 5 more rings during 20 years in Foxborough. And the only team that seemed to stop him was the Giants, which happened twice in Super Bowls. But after 20 years with the Patriots, Brady decided to sign with what had been at best a mediocre Tampa Bay Buccaneers team and even led them to a Super Bowl title in his first year with that team. The Buccaneers also added some better pieces and had vast defensive improvement between the season before he came and the season he got there that helped them get to the Super Bowl. They also became the first NFL team to win the Super Bowl in its home stadium. And obviously, most touchdown passes all time, 7 Super Bowl titles, 3 MVPs. Like I said, the accolades go on and on. Solidified himself as the greatest quarterback and football player of all time, destined for enshrinement in the Football Hall of Fame. Released a lengthy Instagram post about his career and his time with the Buccaneers on Tuesday, officially retiring from the National Football League. Brady becomes the second quarterback to retire this offseason. Pittsburgh's Ben Roethlisberger, who was drafted 4 years after Brady, retired just a couple weeks ago. Tampa is now left with rookie Kyle Trask and veteran bust Blaine Gabbert as its quarterbacks on the roster, so you could see them address that somewhere in this offseason, depending on how much they actually like Trask, who was their second-round pick, I believe, last season. There's also been speculation that Tampa could be a potential destination for Jimmy Garoppolo when San Francisco trades them, like they've reportedly been trying to do. Other NFL news, we have 6 of the 9 head coaching vacancies filled, and all 3 general manager positions have been filled. The Las Vegas Raiders have hired Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels as their head coach, and Patriots personnel executive Dave Ziegler as their new GM. Giants went with Brian Dable, the offensive coordinator from the Buffalo Bills, as their head coach, and Buffalo assistant GM Joe Shane as their general manager. Chicago, the Bears have hired Colts defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus, I've heard it pronounced both ways, as their head coach, and former Kansas City executive Ryan Poles as the new GM. Minnesota, the new GM is Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, who came from the Cleveland Browns front office and reportedly settled on Kevin O'Connell, the Rams offensive coordinator, as their new head coach, but he cannot be hired officially until after the Super Bowl. Nathaniel Hackett, the Packers offensive coordinator, has been hired as the new coach of the Denver Broncos. And Jacksonville has hired former Philadelphia Eagles head coach, former Kansas City offensive coordinator, former Green Bay, and I believe a few other teams' backup quarterback Doug Peterson. Won the Super Bowl in Philly. Anytime you can get a coach like that, I think I've covered this before, anytime you can get a coach with that kind of pedigree is good for a young team like Jacksonville, and is a good hire. He's, like I said, he's a veteran backup quarterback. He was in the league for a lot of years. Behind Brett Favre specifically, he's seen a lot of things. He's absorbed the game. Nick Foles and Carson Wentz have had career years under him. So it is a great fit for developing the young prodigy Trevor Lawrence down there after he had a bit of a rough rookie season. So it certainly makes sense to hire him down there. I don't know why it took them so long, and kind of seemed like they were dragging their feet over who they were going to hire. But ultimately, it's a pretty good hire for Jacksonville. That leaves Houston, New Orleans, and Miami as the remaining 3 openings. New Orleans has interviewed Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. Former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores is at least on the list. I don't know if he's interviewed yet. Their current defensive coordinator Dennis Allen is also on that list, as is Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the former Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback. And recently it was reported that they will be interviewing Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy for the position. Flores is also apparently among the finalists in Houston, with a couple questionable other ones. Josh McCown really has no NFL coaching experience. I mean, he is another guy who spent a ton of time in the league as a backup quarterback, but that would be a questionable head coaching hire at best right there. And Philadelphia defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, whose unit really regressed in his 1 year of being in charge of them. In Miami, the reports are that they're talking to Dallas offensive coordinator Kellen Moore and San Francisco offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel this week. Haven't seen anything else about finalists there. And speaking of the coaching and GM hires, we mentioned Flores as a candidate for the Saints and the Texans. He has also filed a suit suing the league and a number of teams for unfair hiring practices, particularly when dealing with people of color. The lawsuit cites some text messages from Patriots coach Bill Belichick. And basically, Belichick sent a message that let Flores know that Dable had gotten the job 3 days before Flores was scheduled to do his interview with the Giants. It also alleges that Broncos officials showed up an hour late, looking disheveled, even possibly drunk, and seemed disinterested during their interview with Flores, and alleges that Dolphins owner Stephen Ross offered Flores $100,000 per game to lose the games on purpose. The suit also mentions the Detroit Lions firing of Jim Caldwell, and since then his defensive coordinator Terrell Austin, who was also interviewed by General Manager Bob Quinn as a candidate for his replacement, has come out and said he wasn't taken seriously in that interview, and that it was clear that Bob Quinn had already settled on Matt Patricia before the interview took place. The NFL has had policies in place that were supposed to help that clearly haven't worked. The Rooney Rule is essentially a rule that says NFL teams must interview at least one minority candidate for these open executive and head coaching positions. And last year they even added draft compensation and incentives for teams to develop minority candidates to be hired. And as we sit here today, there's only one black head coach currently in the NFL. There are a handful of general managers, but not a ton. Clearly, it's been an issue in the league for a long time, not been handled well. I'm not sure the NFL really knows how to handle it or how it wants to handle it. And Flores is right to challenge for that change, and I'll get back to him in a minute. But another very damning aspect of this lawsuit is the allegation against Stephen Ross offering $100,000 to lose on purpose. Stephen A. Smith called for him to be stripped of ownership for the team. I think that's a valid valid argument, and absolutely should be in consideration. I honestly rarely see eye to eye Stephen A.'s points, but he's absolutely right on that one. And I'll take it a step further. You look at what baseball did with Pete Rose when he was betting on games. They banned him for life. Why shouldn't the NFL ban Stephen Ross from life? I mean, sure, he wasn't playing the game, but from an influential standpoint, both guys were attempting to change the outcome of the game from a position that had influence on the game. So why shouldn't the punishment be the same? It's also notable to mention that after this lawsuit came out, former Browns head coach Hugh Jackson claimed he was incentivized to lose games in Cleveland. Obviously, everybody who has been mentioned in this suit is refuting his claims. Obviously, no one's going to admit publicly, hey, yeah, that's exactly what we did. He's right in regards to those kinds of allegations. So that makes sense. And there were some other coaches of color who said that they felt they were treated fairly in their coaching interviews, but still doesn't reflect in the outlook in the current state of the league. The league itself has said that the case has no merit, so we'll have to see what happens. But as for Flores, as I was saying before, he is absolutely right to be challenging the league on this. The representation in the league is clearly not fair, and perfectly qualified black coaches are being passed over. There's no way Jim Caldwell shouldn't have a head coaching job right now if he wants it. He took Indy to a Super Bowl. He built Detroit into a playoff team. He's been in the league a long time. He knows what he's doing. He should absolutely be in there. And Eric Bieniemy, I mentioned he's getting a interview with the Saints, but that's really the only time his name has been mentioned this entire offseason. I mean, sure, the Chiefs' offense had a little bit of a step back this year, but he's been a top coaching candidate for years with no promotion to a head coaching role ever coming from it. And there are way too many other examples. Flores himself is still available this offseason and is a finalist in Houston and possibly New Orleans, but for sure Houston. And this lawsuit, at first it makes me think that he's been told no by both those teams, because why file the suit if you're getting a head coaching job? But then you think more about it, and what he's doing is he's really trying to change the practices in the league, and he's putting the other colored coaches and executives in the hiring practice in the league ahead of his own interests. Many analysts have pointed out that the NFL is really what they refer to as the old boys club, and this lawsuit is Flores kind of Kaepernicking himself